trying to figure out who Josiah was talking about. Let's give Josiah a round of applause. He was a fine young man. Isn't that right? Brother is very, very, very focused. And a lot of times, they don't want us to see our young people like that. They don't advertise them. They're not on channel 12, 742, not in NJ.com or the Star Ledger or RLS Media. They don't advertise our young people like that because they're afraid for our young people to see young people like him. Maybe they're determined that they want to do that instead of the other things that they're doing, that they could be successful like he's been successful here today. I'm so proud of him, and it warms my heart to hear him speak. He's getting better and better and better. He's going to do incredible things, and just glad to know he's from the city of Newark. We got a great program for you this evening. We got Roland Martin here. Yeah, we got some gospel singers. Maybe y'all don't know who they are. Y'all don't know who they are? Yeah, we got a great show for you this evening. I'm surprised, you know, that we don't have this. We need standing room only in here. We need to make sure we get the word out so we can have standing room only in these places. You know, this is our 32nd annual celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday. For 32 years, the city of Newark has been putting on the Sing and the Praise the King event, and we thought it not robbery to continue it for 5 or 6 more years that we've been here, and prayerfully it continues on and on and on and on, because it is necessary now more than it's ever been. Celebrating King now is more important to us than probably it's ever been, you know, particularly in the time that we live in today. But I want you to know, when King was alive, he wasn't that popular. No. In 1968, they did a poll, a Harris poll of Martin Luther King's favorability, and 75% of the people they polled thought of King unfavorably. 75%, because we taught to love people when they're not around us anymore. So we praise them when they're dead, but when they're alive, we shun them away. We don't pull people towards us and protect them while they're alive, fighting for us. We separate ourselves. We allow these people, and a lot of those people who vindicated King or said things about King looked like him. Yeah, they looked like King. In some of the cities that he went to, we talked bad about him. Some folks said he wasn't radical enough. Some people did their best to diminish him, to demean him, to downplay him, to say he wasn't a leader like he was, because at the time there was an effort to separate us from our leadership. I mean, when people try to separate you from your leadership, it's because they're trying to separate you from victory. And so they spend a lot of time trying to make you believe things about King that was not true. They tried to make you believe things about King that wasn't right or real, because they didn't really want you to follow him, because it wasn't really about King, it was about what he was saying. When King was looked at as unfavorable in them times, he was speaking out against the Vietnam War. We got a president trying to start a war now of his own. When he was unfavorable, he was talking about a radical revolution of values, of economic and political values, about the redistribution of wealth. He talked about a guaranteed income for all. King was killed in Memphis and Tennessee trying to organize sanitation workers. He wasn't just organizing so he could sit at the counter to eat. He was organizing that we have some money to go into the store so he could sit at the counter and eat. King talked about $50 billion being redistributed to African Americans in this country because he knew that we needed reparations. King supported reparations. Oh yeah, I support reparations just like King supported reparations. I don't care, they tell you on welfare, I need welfare, farm subsidies, housing subsidies, whatever subsidy you got. Everything you did to me, you owe me. As a matter of fact, you don't have enough resources to pay me for the things you took from me. Hell, we worked for free for 200 some odd years, was lynched and thrown in jail and beaten and murdered and isolated so we could be a part of this democracy, not somebody else's democracy, but this democracy we fought to be a part of. Hell, everything I get, you owe me. I ought to get free housing and free education. I ought to get money in my bank. If I open up a farm, you should finance the farm. If my kids want a store, you should finance the store. And you should pay for our babies to go back to Africa for free so they can learn about their culture and their history. All the stuff you owe me. They was mad at King because he talked like that. The people used to tell us we need to get on a plane and go back to Africa. Hell, we wouldn't be here if you didn't bring us here. If you didn't want us here, you shouldn't have brought us here. But you're stuck with us now. That's what Martin Luther King was saying, so he became unfavorable. And as he fought and as he marched and as he protested to get us the things we deserve and need, many of us didn't understand what he was doing. We wanted to just live comfortably the way we are. Just like when there's housing, when the landlords treat us badly, when the mayor says, oh, we got to close that building, we got to change, we got to put pressure on that landlord. Many of us get upset because we used to living with rats and rodents and garbage and mold on the ceiling and the roof, and we worried about Thanksgiving. Hell, how can you celebrate a holiday in those conditions? You shouldn't be worried about the holiday. You should be worried about the conditions. As long as they think they can treat us this way, they'll always treat us this way. I was one of the victims. I'm going to get down because you already got a guest speaker. I was one of the people when I was in college that didn't think highly of Martin Luther King because I thought I was a radical guy. Thought I was radical, and I was taught that King wasn't radical enough. Let me tell you, I was completely incorrect. Completely and totally incorrect. King was a radical Christian. Do you understand what that means when he said he's a radical Christian? Because how can you be a Christian in a world that supports poverty? How can you be a Christian when people are locked up unjustly and unduly? How can you be a Christian in so much inequity in this place and not say nothing and not speak up about it? If you say you believe in Jesus, then you have to do what Jesus did. If you say you believe in God, then you have to do what God supports. If you said you read the Bible and the Bible is alive, you have to bring it alive. And King wanted to bring it alive. He didn't just go to church to read flowery words. He went to church to bring the words of the Bible alive. And so he became the enemy just like Moses was the enemy. He became the enemy just like Jesus was the enemy. He became the enemy just like the people of God was the enemy. So if this world loves you and you love God, then you're not reading or doing what God would have done. This world should despise you if you follow God. If you're a Christian, then the world, and better than that, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're any religion, this world should despise you because this world is wrong. This world is unjust. It is upside down. There's much inequity. Just walk down the streets, you'll see inequality everywhere. If you're comfortable with this place, then you cannot call yourself a religious person. And that is what King represented. He was a radical Christian. As a matter of fact, being a Christian is radical by itself. Being a Christian is radical. Oh, I know you get upset if I talk like that. Being a Christian is radical. Like we don't even know how to love our neighbors, never mind love ourselves. Being a Christian is radical. We don't know how to turn the other cheek. Christian is being a radical thing. How you going to feed people? How you going to fight for people to have things when they taking things from you? It's radical being a Christian, to give your life, to give your reputation, to sacrifice your family, to sacrifice your kids, to sacrifice it all. That's why King was murdered in Memphis. King didn't die of natural causes. He didn't have a heart attack. He just didn't sleep and not wake up one day. King didn't have diabetes. He didn't die of some wild cancer disease. He didn't die of natural causes. King was murdered in Memphis. He was shot. He was murdered. He was assassinated. That's right. King was assassinated. If you look deeper, you'll understand James Earl Ray. James Earl Ray had some help. There was a man arrested in states far away who happened to find his way out of jail and automatically know where Martin Luther King was staying at in Memphis, Tennessee, and happened to get the hotel next to his and discovered the day he was able to come outside on the balcony and was there at the right time just to shoot King down that day. Oh, I don't believe that, and King's family doesn't believe that, and neither should you believe that. And what you should not believe as well is that these people who give you permission to celebrate King actually love him. It's easy to love King now that he's not with us, and celebrate him now that he's in the grave, because when he was alive, he demanded us to do something. He demanded us to be something, to show up places, to fight and raise our voices. But no longer that he's here, we can have a King Day. And you can wear your Martin Luther King shirt. And if you go to some events, they'll sell you some Martin Luther King paraphernalia. There's a Martin Luther King Center and Martin Luther King monuments all over the country. There's Martin Luther King streets in every city in America. Everywhere where we are, there's a Martin Luther King Boulevard where the poor people live at that look like me. There's a Martin Luther King Avenue and a Martin Luther King Street and a Martin Luther King Way and a Martin Luther King Boulevard. Hell, there are Martin Luther King schools. There are libraries and universities named after Martin Luther King. There are whole sections of libraries dedicated to Martin Luther King. And if you go to some sermons, you'll hear them preaching about Martin Luther King. And every religion in this country, they talking about this great man, Martin Luther King Jr., who they arrested in Birmingham, Alabama, who they beat over the head in Selma. They talking about this great man, Martin Luther King. But when he was alive, 75% of Americans that they interviewed and polled said that they thought unfavorable about Martin Luther King. So what Brother Josiah said is right. If you saw Martin Luther King today, would you be on his side? Would you support Martin Luther King? Would you surround him? Would you protect him? Would you keep his enemies off him? Would you defend him in the barbershop, in the beauty parlor, in the church pews? Would you defend him at work? Would you argue with people at the bus stop and on the bus stop? When he had a rally, would you show up there? When they persecuted him in court, would you be in court with him? Yeah, would you stand in front of him when they pulled the knife on him, when they tried to shoot him on the balcony? Would you be there with him? Would you be there with him now? Oh, you might not have been there with him in 1968. So we're trying to figure out what you would have done in 2020, the year of clear vision. You wouldn't have been with Martin Luther King then, and you wouldn't have been with him now. Just like you praise Jesus now, but you surely wouldn't have been with him when he was alive. When you go back and you ask yourself these things, would I have been with Jesus? Would I would have been with Muhammad? Would I would have been with Moses? Could I be in a fiery furnace like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego? Could I deal with the torment that Job dealt with? Is my faith that strong? Would I would have been with him then? Because there's some Martin Luther Kings walking around today. Some of them are 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, like this boy who just got up here today. Some of them look like us, got wide noses and thick lips and kinky hair. They from Newark, New Jersey. They was born on Quitman Street, on Avon Avenue and South 17th Street. They might have been raised in Dayton Street projects and Seth Boyd or Prince Street or Hayes Homes. They might have walked these neighborhoods, went to Malcolm X Shabazz or Central High School. They might have went to Barringer High School, yeah. They might be in Harriet Tubman Elementary School or Peshawn Avenue School today. Would you protect Martin Luther King when he was 12, when he was 17, when he was 18, when he was 22, when he was 23? And would you say today, you're not going to murder Martin Luther King today as you did in 1968? And if you kill King, you got another thing coming. So when we get to the 33rd year of our celebration, when we get to the 33rd year of our celebration, which is next year. Let's hope that from today to that day, you figured out how you're going to support the Martin Luther Kings that live with us now. How you going to work for them now? How you going to protect them now? How you going to cover them now? And when you get on your knees, do you pray for them too? And after you pray for them, do you make a determination to get up and go out your house and do something with them? That's what we need. So we want to take this celebration from just us hooping and hollering to us getting out here and doing something. I'm tired of people talking about stay woke. Woke is just a state of consciousness. And the reason why we say stay woke, because we always sleep. So we're trying to tell people to stay woke because we sleep. Woke is just a state of consciousness. You can be wide awake and fooled at the same time. You can be wide awake and tricked and misinformed and bamboozled. And yeah, you can be wide awake and led astray at the same time. We want you to be woke, but we want you to be informed. We want you to read. We want you to study. We want you to apply what you study. We want you to organize. We want you to get together with folks, and we want you to help us make this a better place that we live in. God bless y'all, and Godspeed to y'all.
How we doing? Certainly glad to see all of you here. Glad to be here in Newark. I certainly want to thank the mayor for this event. I want to thank him. Give my damn speech. We might as well just go right to the entertainment. I should say thanks a bunch, take a selfie, and go on backstage. But I'm certainly glad to see everybody here. Let me also thank everyone who had a hand in inviting me to be here. I never take it lightly when folks extend an invitation to speak, to be able to share a word with our people. It is not one that I take lightly. It is not one that also, y'all can leave lights up. I like seeing people, so don't worry about it. You see? This don't have to be a club. Turn lights up. Ain't nobody here on warrants. Everybody's supposed to be here. Leave the lights up. So again, it's not one that I take lightly, and I'm just so glad to be here. I also, let me also thank so many of you who have been huge supporters and listeners of the Tom Joyner Morning Show for the last 25 years. I, of course, spent the last 11 years. Tom retired at the end of 2019. We thank so many of you, and also people still come to me, stopping me, saying they miss News One Now on TV One. And that certainly means a lot. But I also remind people that even though News One Now was canceled December 2017, I was not worried about that. I've always understood technology, and that's why when I launched Roland Martin Unfiltered, September 2018, and the first year was amazing. We had 100.7 million views, 345 million minutes viewed, increased our YouTube channel by 280,000 subscribers. Didn't buy a single ad or boost. It was all organic. It was all our people who understood that we have to have a daily news source that is Black-owned, Black-controlled. And I'm going to talk about this some in my speech, but we have a fundamental problem in this country with Black folks. We talk about food deserts, but we're fed the exact same thing in media, where we have news deserts, where all we are inundated with is entertainment in sports. You look at most Black websites today, most Black media outlets, they spend all their time talking about what Beyonce's doing and Jay-Z, and let me be clear, No disrespect to that, but while we are talking about what is happening on the entertainment side, we are on the other side, we are getting attacked when it comes to voter suppression, we're being attacked when it comes to civil rights, and people cannot exist if we are simply being fed the same entertainment stuff on a constant basis. And so that's one of the reasons why I created this news outlet. You will never ever hear me talk about a damn Kardashian. Because what we focus on are what black folks are doing and how we are about empowering ourselves, and that's why we do what we do, and that's why I can't wait when we launch the next phase, when we take this one show and launch it as a black digital network, which we're working on as we speak. So now the task at hand, and let me get right to it. Anytime you stand in front of a group of black people to talk, you have to tag your text. Now, some of y'all have no idea what the hell I just said, which means that if you don't know what tag your text means, clearly you do not go to church. So if the person next to you said, what does that mean? Lean over them and explain to them, tag your text is what happens in church when the pastor titles the sermon. See, you got to tag your text because some folk not gonna remember nothing. So at least if you give them a title and somebody say what he talked about, they might remember the title and nothing else. I shall tag this text. It is time for us to follow the real Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Let me apologize in advance because you may have been to previous MLK events, and you had to endure speakers and other parts of the program where they presented to you the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King that is a creation of white America. Let me apologize to you in advance because you have likely gone to Dr. King events, and most of the folks spent their time talking about 2 speeches he gave as if those were the only 2 speeches he ever gave. In fact, you probably have been to Dr. King events where they spent their time talking about the I Have a Dream speech, when first of all, that was never even the name of the speech. It was Normalcy Never Again. More than likely, you have been to those events where they did talk about that particular speech, and then they called it the March on Washington, leaving out the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, because if you leave off the Jobs and Freedom part, then you have no idea what the March on Washington was about. Let me apologize because you've probably been to some MLK events where they talked about that speech and all they talked about was the I Have a Dream part, which was not even in the original speech, and they ignored the top 2/3 of that speech, which really talked about a radical economic agenda that spoke to also police brutality in this country. If you don't believe me, take the time to actually go read it or listen to it or watch it, because I'm not lying. You probably have also spent time coming to MLK events, listening to people talk about Dr. King's mountaintop speech, and only talk about the last 2 minutes of that speech where he said, I've been to the mountaintop, but they completely ignored the fact that that was a 43-minute and 16-second speech, which laid out a vast agenda that laid out where black folks need to go. In fact, if you even bother to listen to the whole speech, I had a guy on my show, Keith D. Miller, he wrote a book called Martin Luther King's Biblical Epic, His Final Great Speech. See, I say all of that because I cannot just blame white America that consistently presents Dr. King as a civil rights mascot or a bobblehead to us that we pull out every year and tap the bobblehead and it does this, because too many black folks have fallen into the exact same trap by listening to what they have said about Dr. King and not using our own minds to redefine who he is by exactly quoting him and presenting to black children the radical Dr. King that we know exactly who he was. See, I can't always put something on what white folks do when too many black newspapers and black cable networks and black radio stations and black websites are not doing their job on instructing our people exactly who Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was. Because see, we're walking around saying, oh my God, Dr. King, we talk about his birthday, we talk about the holiday, we talk about barbecues, we talk about events, but what we have done is we have created two generations of people who have been born and who have played the same game of people running around posting quotes of Dr. King on their Instagram page and posting quotes on Twitter and Facebook and not challenging them by saying, do you actually know what the hell you posted? See, I have just reached the point in my life where, frankly, I am sick and tired of playing the go along to get along game and making other folks comfortable when at some point we have to be uncomfortable. See, even tonight, some of y'all might be real uncomfortable with what I got to say tonight. Let me be real clear. If y'all wanted a comfortable night in Newark, you should have invited my wife. She's an ordained minister. She could have prayed with you. She could have laid hands on you because God has blessed her with this wonderful spirit of comfort. She's a certified grief counselor. And so if you are the walking dead, she is right up your alley. But let me be clear. While the good Lord gave my wife a spirit of comfort, God gave me a spirit of discomfort. I make folk real uncomfortable on television and on radio. And so if some of y'all start doing the butt dance, that's where you're in that seat like, dang, did he really go there? Yeah, because I'm here to let you understand, ain't gonna be no comfortable speech tonight. There will not be a way you're feeling good. No, this is about challenging you and moving you beyond where you are in order for us to move our people to another place, because far too many of us, even in 2020, have been too comfortable with how things have been. I dare say out of all of the books that Dr. King has written, out of the books that have been written about him, about his speeches, I have said this across the country. I probably have sold more copies of this book than even the King Center. Every person in this room, every family in this room should have a copy of Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. This is the book that Dr. King went to Jamaica in 1966 and 67 and began to write. And this is the book that was published in 67. And do understand that out of the 4 books Dr. King actually wrote, this was his worst-selling book. See, a whole bunch of us are familiar with Why We Can't Wait, Letters from a Birmingham Jail. But see, what we have to understand is that this book here sold less than 30,000 copies. It was worst-selling book, and in fact, it was not published 10 years after his death. But see, if you actually read this book, then you will understand why it was a worst-selling book. Then you will understand why they did not publish it for a decade after his death. Because everything that has happened to black folks in America since his assassination on April 4th, 1968, he literally laid it out. Take your pick, education, economics, political, go down the line. He literally laid this out. Here was a man who understood that he was marching towards a date with destiny in terms of his death, and had to leave us with something for us to be able to take hold of and understand and then take forward. And for so many folk, we're quoting just a couple of speeches without realizing that this man went far beyond just that and was one of the most radical not only thinkers but also leaders. It's just so you can understand what he said and why it was important. He talked about the fight for civil rights during the Black Freedom Movement, which some people call the Civil Rights Movement. He says that the outraged white citizen had been sincere when he snatched the whips from the southern sheriffs and forbade them more cruelties, but when this was to a degree accomplished, the emotions that had momentarily inflamed him melted away. He writes, white American left the Negro on the ground and in devastating numbers walked off with the aggressor. He writes, it appeared that the white segregationists and the ordinary white citizen had more in common with one another than either had with the Negro. Now this ain't me talking, this is King. The highlighted part. He says, when Negroes looked for the second phase, the realization of equality, they found that many of their white allies had quietly disappeared. The Negroes of America had taken the president, the press, and the pulpit at their word when they spoke in broad terms of freedom and justice. But the absence of brutality and unregenerate evil is not the presence of justice. To stay murder is not the same thing as to ordain brotherhood. The word was broken, and the free-running expectations of the Negro crashed into the stone walls of white resistance. The result was havoc. Negroes felt cheated, especially in the North, while many whites felt that the Negroes had gained so much it was virtually impudent and greedy to ask for more so soon. That ain't the Dr. King you gonna hear on ABC, or CBS, or NBC, or Fox News, or CNN, or MSNBC. That is not the King that we have gotten comfortable with, because here was somebody who has been challenging white America to say, what are you going to do after the laws have been put in place? He writes in this book, it didn't cost America much to allow us to sit at a lunch counter. It did not cost us much to allow us to go into hotels and swim in swimming pools and go to schools. He said, the question is, what now will you do when it's time to write that much larger check to fix what took place over the past 350 some odd years? That was the challenge to America, and that's the challenge we're still having to confront in 2020. What we have to understand is that here we sit in 2020, some 24 years away, when America is going to become a nation that is majority people of color. By 2043, 53% of the United States will be people of color, 47% will be white. Latinos, African Americans, Asians, Native Americans, and others will comprise that 53%. And do understand that every single thing that you see happening in America today by Donald Trump and the racists who follow Donald Trump, understand that that is why you are seeing the level of pushback, because they are scared to death about 2043. If you want to understand where they're thinking from, just read the writings of Pat Buchanan over the last 25 years. And what their greatest fear is not just what will happen when we are in power. Their greatest fear is, will we do to them what they did to us? Don't believe me? Read Mitch Landrieu's book when he talked about taking down the Confederate statues in the South. Mitch Landrieu wrote in his book, white people, let me let y'all know, I'm white, I've been knowing black, and black folks ain't gonna do to us what we did to them, because they got more damn compassion than we do. A white mayor from the South actually wrote that. See, you have to understand what's going on. You have to understand that just today, the Republicans in the United States Senate announced that they are going to be voting on one of the most anti-civil rights federal judge nominees this week. They have nominated and approved significant numbers of federal judges that if Donald Trump is not defeated in November 2020, he will more than likely have appointed half of the federal bench at the end of his term, and they are expressly appointing young, white, male federal judges so they can be there for the next 40 to 50 years. So if you're one of those dumbass black folks who didn't vote in 2016,
And let me be real clear. 2 weeks ago, a brother came up to me at the airport and he said, Mr. Martin, I watch your show, but I got to ask you. I didn't vote in 2016, and on your show, you said the black folks who didn't vote were dumbasses. I got to ask you, are you calling me a dumbass? And I guess he thought because he would be walking up to me personally that I would somehow change my tune, and I said, yes, you were a dumbass. But I then explained to him, I said, what are the 3 most important issues you care about? And then I explained to him with the 3 issues he brought up, how the president has a direct impact on those 3 things. And I explained to him about the federal judges. I explained to him about public policy. I explained to him about all those things, and he said, thank you very much. He said, now I'm voting in 2020. And to the side over here, a white man came up to me. He said, I want to thank you. He knew who I was. He said, I want to thank you because I'm a teacher. And I want to thank you because you took the time to explain to him why he didn't vote was wrong and why he must vote. Now see, when you watch my show, Cleo Monago would say, well, Roland, you know what? We need to affirm our people. You shouldn't call them dumbasses. And there's some folks who say, and again, I know some preachers down here, y'all like, I can't believe he cussed. But the reality is, a whole bunch of y'all cuss privately. So let's don't even front. So God know you cuss. So I'm going to go ahead and be real. God know I cuss privately. I'm going to cuss publicly. And so I'm just going to be real. And the reason I call folks dumbasses who did not vote, and I don't put the blame at the feet of black people for Trump winning, but I say that because you have to understand that I don't care what your feelings are. You cannot allow evil to invade the White House, because what is happening, and again, we don't connect the dots. Again, Mitch McConnell was on Sean Hannity's show and specifically said that we are appointing young men and women to the federal bench. Republicans are going to judges who are 70 and 75, asking them to retire so they can appoint folks who are 35, 38, and 40. And so you better understand, I don't care what you care about. If there is nothing you like about any Democratic candidate, suck that up, because that man cannot return to the White House, because they want to guarantee they're going to vote against civil rights, they're going to vote against environmental rights, they're going to vote against voter protection, because understand, do the math. If that person sits on the federal bench for the next 50 years, that means that when America becomes a majority nation, a majority people of color in 24 years, that federal judge will be sitting there another 26 years. See, if you need to understand, because somebody might be saying, yeah, okay, fine, but if they not saying this, I'm not going to vote. You shouldn't be telling black folks this. We should be demanding stuff. Yes, it's a whole bunch of stuff we should be demanding. But let me explain so you can understand. If it wasn't for the federal judges, there is no civil rights movement. Those were not state judges. Brown versus Board of Education, first of all, there was Brown 1 and Brown 2. We don't talk about Brown 2, there's Brown 1. Those were federal judges. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, after the United States ruled Brown v. Board of Education, they kicked it down to the lower courts to implement. So what happened in the South, in Louisiana, when the legislature would then vote to keep black folks out of school? The civil rights attorneys would go right to the federal courts, and then the courts would then grant an injunction stopping the law they just passed. In fact, even the injunction was a creation that came out of the civil rights movement. Law was created by virtue of black folks fighting for rights. So you can go down the line. Every major civil rights initiative that happened came a direct result of an assault on the laws of states, and the federal courts ruled. And why do you think the Federalist Society was created? Why do you think conservatives created all of these think tanks? because they are still angry with what took place with the federal courts. It was the federal courts that enforced the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It was the federal courts that enforced the 1965 Voting Rights Act. It was the federal courts that enforced the 1968 Voting Rights Act. Right now, you got a prison in Mississippi where they are basically treating inmates like crap. I grew up in Texas, and it's embedded in my mind. Judge William Wayne Justice, who was a federal judge who oversaw the Texas prison system for more than 20 years because of their treatment of inmates. If that was left to the state judges, prisoners in Texas would have been left in horrible conditions, yet it was a federal judge who was the one who had oversight of the federal prison. These judges don't like class action lawsuits. They don't like anything to do with the environment. And so Republicans are playing the long game while Democrats over here fighting about Bernie and Elizabeth and Joe and everybody else. So the Democrats in the House have passed more than 400 bills. Mitch McConnell ain't looking at none of them. All he's saying is more judges. More judges. In fact, he left open 100 vacancies while Obama was elected, and understand, because they knew what was happening. And so you better understand, they are not worried about 2020. They want to guarantee that federal judges for the next half century will be ruling the way they want them to rule.
We got to understand that this thing is deeper than today. We got to understand that what they are trying to establish in this country is a right-wing ideology and a right-wing agenda that they will be able to control through the courts, because they know what's happening with the demographic shifts and what was going to be happening politically. Let me unpack that. We are talking about how can we elect more black mayors and more black council members and more black state officials and more black governors and more black members of Congress and more black United States senators. And we're talking about more Latino. Folks talked about how diverse the United States Congress was on the Democratic side compared to the Republican side. They understand the demographic shifts that are going on. They know majority of black people are not caring about them. They know more than 70% of Latinos don't care about them. They know that young voters don't care about them. So what they're saying is, we know what's happening. We're going to risk this thing. We're going to control this branch. There are three branches of government: executive, legislative, judicial. They know that if we control judicial, any law that's passed by the legislative and signed by the president can be invalidated by judicial. So here we over here saying, let's elect more of us. And they saying, we're going to put some judges who going to stop whatever y'all decide to do. So we have to understand the game that they are running, because they see the train that's coming down the track. This election this fall will likely be the first election in American history where 70% or fewer of the electorate will be white. 2016, 71 or 72% of all votes cast were cast by white Americans. That's why African American Latinos have to over-index when it comes to our voting, because we can't afford to stay at home. In Alabama, I had lunch with Senator Doug Jones on Saturday when I was there for the National Association of Black Journalists board meeting, and he told me there are 900,000 unregistered people in Alabama. 500,000 of them are African American. In South Carolina, where Jamie Harrison is trying to oust that turncoat Lindsey Graham, who will say and do whatever needed to kiss Trump's butt, there are some 300,000 unregistered black folks in South Carolina. If you go to Georgia, where Stacey Abrams did an amazing job with the Georgia Voter Project, you have some 300,000 African Americans who are not registered. My home state of Texas, there are 2 million eligible but unregistered Latinos in Texas. What I'm trying to tell you is this here. If black folks and Latino folks voted their numbers and white folks voted the way they are, we literally could take over many of these southern states, which is why in the southern states they did everything they could when it comes to voter suppression, because don't nobody work that hard to keep you from voting unless there is power in that vote. King understood all of that because he understood the stakes were critically important. But see, even here in Chaos or Community, where do we go from here? King says everything is not contingent upon the ballot. One of the mistakes that we have made when we talk about elections, that we spend so much time and energy saying, how do we register folks? How do we get them out to vote? But then what we have to understand, at the end of one election, that's the end of one process. It's the beginning of another process. See, I grew up in Clinton Park neighborhood in Houston, Texas. My mama and daddy, not rich, not even close. Mom and daddy never made more than $50,000 combined. 5 kids, neither one of them went to college, but they cared enough about the community where they actually bought a home and owned it. And so they began to create the Clinton Park Civic Club. And there were black folks in our neighborhood, and our neighborhood was one of the first master plan communities from HUD in the 1940s for African Americans. And so my grandparents, when they migrated from Opelousas, Louisiana, moved to Clinton Park. That's where I was born, that's where I was raised, where I grew up. And so my parents were concerned about where our neighborhood was going. And so they got with a few other folks in the neighborhood and said, we need a civic club so we can address the issues in our neighborhood. And there were haters who were saying, well, man, that ain't gonna do nothing. I don't know why y'all meeting. But see, thank God I had parents and neighbors who did not care about haters on the sideline, who stayed focused on building. And so their first thing was, we need to deal with trash on the streets. And so they focused, how can we begin to pick up trash just on one street? See, I think one of the problems that we make is when we have organizations and meetings, we spend a whole lot of time putting together these massive lists of all the stuff we want to do. And then we end up having a second meeting about the massive list and add more stuff to the list. And by the 5th meeting, all we've done is have 4 meetings about the list, as opposed to, can we actually get something done? And so they went from picking up trash on one street to then taking it to a couple of blocks and several more blocks. Then they said, we care about crime, so let's find out who is a local commander in the area with the police department. Let's deal with them. Who picks up trash, who tears down weeded lots, all those different things that impact neighborhoods. In a 10-year period, it went from picking up trash on one street to having new paved streets, new sewer systems, a new senior citizens center converted from an old firehouse, a refurbished park. All those things happened because a handful of people decided that they were sick and tired of how their neighborhood looked, and they needed to band together and create an organization to do it. Why is that important? Because Dr. King taught in Chaos or Community how important it is when it comes to organization. He said mass nonviolence demonstrations will not be enough. They must be supplemented by a continuing job of organization. Continuing. See, that's the problem when it comes to elections. Elections ends, we stop. What we don't do is take the same organization and then now go to City Hall or the school board and then say to the person who we put in place, now you're going to do what you said you were going to do, because if you don't do that, we're going to show up every week to give you hell, to remind you that we the ones who put you in, and then if you don't do what you said you were going to do, we're going to be the same ones to take your ass out. And see, let me just go ahead and take a pause right here, because see, this even means we got to do that when there are black politicians who we love. See, See, I love the people who had the audacity to tell me, well, in 8 years of Obama, you had no criticism of him. I said, well, clearly you never watched me or heard me because I got receipts. See, one of the problems that many of us have is that we hold President Barack Obama with the same regard as Jesus Christ and Dr. King. Oh, yeah, see, right now is the uncomfortable part of the speech. Because for too many of us, for 8 years, we were stuck at the inauguration parade, sitting there going, wow, a black first family, when everybody else left. And everybody else left and were demanding things and organizing and mobilizing, and we were just so happy and excited seeing Barack, Michelle, Sasha, and Malia. For many of us, we fell in love because he was the first black president. We forgot he was the 44th black president, so we stopped asking of the 44th when we asked the previous 43. So I know right now, y'all don't want to say nothing, y'all don't want to clap, because you're the very person I'm talking about. What I'm trying to get you to understand is it has never been in the interest of black people falling in love with any politician, be they black, white, Latino, Asian, male, female, straight, gay, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, atheist, it does not matter. For black folks, we have to continue to ask, this is what we want, are you going to give us what we want, and if not, when we going to get it? But again, we fell in love. I don't fall in love with politicians. That's why I was all on President Obama about why he should appoint a black woman to the United States Supreme Court, knowing full well they were never going to give him a hearing. But I'm like, it's been 104 white men on the court. Ain't nobody fighting for the 105th. But you appoint the first sister, I can guarantee you it was some folks who was going to put some pressure on the Senate as well as the Republicans, and I do believe that would have had a major impact in the 2016 election. What I'm trying to say is, and King said it, it requires organization. To produce change, people must be organized to work together in units of power. These units may be political, as in the case of voters' leagues and political parties. They may be economic, as in the case of groups of tenants who join forces to form a union, or groups of the unemployed and underemployed who organize to get jobs and better wages. More and more, the civil rights movement will have to engage in the task of organizing people into permanent groups to protect their own interests and produce change in their behalf. This task is tedious and lacks the drama of demonstrations, but it is necessary for meaningful results. Don't get mad at me, get mad at King, which is why you here. We are not going to be able to fundamentally change our communities with a tweet. It's not going to happen with a Facebook post. It's not going to happen with an Instagram caption. It is only going to happen when we are willing to mobilize and organize our people around shared interests. That is how it is going to change. Which means that we are also going to have to utilize the institutions that are at our disposal to do that. What did King say? There are already structured forces in the Negro community that can serve as the basis for building a powerful, united front. There are four he named: the Negro Church, the Negro Press, the Negro Fraternities and Sororities, and Negro Professional Associations. But he writes, we must admit that these forces have never given their full resources to the cause of Negro liberation. He wrote, there are still too many Negro churches that are so absorbed in a future good over yonder that they condition their members to adjust to the present evils over here. I see there's some people clapping right now. You think I'm talking about the preacher, but he did not say the Negro preacher, he said the Negro church. The Negro church is not just comprised of the preacher, it's comprised of the very people who are sitting in pews who are not doing what they're supposed to do to put pressure on the pastor to be able to lead. It's a whole bunch of us clapping and shouting on Sunday, but don't do a damn thing Monday through Saturday, but then we praying on Sunday saying, why hasn't anything changed? Ain't nothing changed, because what you've done is get on your knees and pray, and you have not gotten up to demonstrate. You have not walked, you have not pressed folks, so don't just sit here and say what the preachers are not doing. No, what the church isn't doing. The church can create its own tutorial programs using its existing body. The church can go to a mile radius around the church and knock on every single door and say, is there a child in this home under 18? And if so, we have free tutorial happening at our church. During the civil rights movement, there were freedom schools. You tell me we can't have the exact same thing in 2020 where we're educating our children. We don't have to ask one school board, one politician creating those very things. It calls on us to be able to use our collective power. So I dare say when you go to church on Sunday, after the word, after the benediction, you then challenge the pastor and say, what's the church gonna do? King says in the same thing. Too many Negro newspapers have veered away from their traditional role as protest organs agitating for social change and have turned to the sensational and the conservative in place of the substantive and the militant. There are 8 black cable and broadcast networks in the United States that do 1,344 hours of content every week and not a single hour dedicated to news. You watch OWN, TV One, Clio TV, BET Her, Aspire, Revolt, and Bounce. Those 8 black networks, what are they constantly feeding us? Award shows, dramas, reality shows, comedy specials, yet folks are walking around like zombies not knowing what's going on because the black networks are not doing their job. They're feeding us that, so we must be telling them, if you're not gonna do some news, at least have a weekly show, we're not gonna watch you. King says you got to maintain your militancy. See, I understand that because I spent 6 years on CNN, but I didn't leave Tom Joyner Morning Show. I didn't leave TV One when I was on CNN. Because see, I didn't believe that I needed white validation. I didn't believe that a mainstream network like CNN was better. I had a brother who came to me and told me, when are you going to get you a show? I'm like, I got a show. I'm on for 5 days a week. He said, no, I mean a real show. I said, a real show? And he said, yeah, a real show. He said, I mean like one on CNN, MSNBC. And I said, do you realize that when Brian Williams comes to D.C. do his show, he's literally sitting in the same seat I sit in? Same set, same wall, same cameras. We send the show down the fiber optics the same way. I said, what you don't realize, when we had News One Now, we contracted out with NBC News Channel using their show. This brother believed that my show wasn't a real show because it wasn't on a white network. I said, dude, talk about a level of self-hate, but a whole bunch of us have that level of self-hate because we are walking around with that level of pain because we actually believe that if it is black, it's not good enough. I sat on a panel this summer in Cincinnati and the brother was he thought he was supporting me, saying, y'all, we got to watch Roland Unfiltered. He actually said, now it might not look as good as CNN. I said, stop. My shit look good. I said, I got 4K Sony cameras that are robotic. I said, bro, don't sit here and tell people my stuff don't look good. Damn it, I pay my graphics folks well. I know how my stuff look. It is a state of mind when we somehow are telling ourselves what ours don't look as good. We have to be willing to challenge our own people who are not giving us what we need. If there are black newspapers right now in this city and in this state that do not have digital operations but still want you to buy the paper, you say, boo, I need you to come to 2020. You got black newspapers saying, we need ads. No, I need some real content. What are you going to do? See, y'all, it's a two-way street here. You cannot advance your people if you as an entity ain't advancing yourself. King lays out in the book, the third group, he said too many Negro social and professional groups have degenerated into snobbishness and a preoccupation with frivolities and trivial activity. The same thing about fraternities and sororities. Look, I'm a lifer of Alpha Phi Alpha, 30 years. And I've challenged alphas, I've challenged AKs and deltas, and all the Divine Nine. You can't have 2 million members. So y'all need to understand something. What's the power of the Divine Nine? We are self-funded. When we have our conventions, we ain't running around asking for corporate support. We fund them ourselves. And what I'm saying is, how can you have organizations with 300,000 and 400,000 members and 250,000 members, totaling more than 2 million? I said, and we are not doing more than what we're doing right now. I said, this should not be a city in America that when they see black and gold coming, they don't get scared. Or when they see pink and green coming, they don't start shaking in their boots. Or when they see red and white coming, they don't do that. In fact, if you remember the Divine Nine, stand up. If you remember the Divine Nine, and what I'm telling you, you should be going back to your organization saying, what are we doing outside of these walls? What are we doing to be transformative? And the question is, when we walk out in the community and folks see our colors, I ain't say sit down. When they see our colors, how are they responding? If there are black folks who see black and gold and purple and gold and red and white and pink and green and see all the colors and they don't know what they represent, that means you ain't doing your job. Now y'all can take a seat. If we are going to live up to what Dr. King talked about, it is going to require us to do more than just shout and celebrate and be satisfied with small things. It's going to require the folks here to raise a level of hell that many of us used to raise. I was born November 14th, 1968. I'm a post-civil rights movement baby. And so too many of us were raised where our parents said, I don't want you to have to deal with that and go through that. That was a disservice to many of us. There were people, too many of us are saying the exact same thing now, saying, baby, I don't want you to focus on that, when the reality is there's nothing that you can show me in the history of black people in this country that we have not had to fight for. Frederick Douglass said, agitate, agitate, agitate. Power concedes nothing without a demand, never had and never will. And here we are in 2020, we're having to do the exact same thing. Some folks say we shouldn't have to do that. Well, baby, that's what it means to be black in America. And I dare say to the folks who are our allies, you got to stand there with us as well, because let me be real clear. If you are Latino or Asian and you are voting in your native tongue, you had better thank black folks, because without the 1965 Voting Rights Act, that would not be the case. If you are a white woman and you have benefited more from affirmative action than anybody else, you better thank black folks, because that was a result of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. If you are walking around on crutches or you are disabled, you better think black folks, because the 1996 American with Disabilities Act is based upon the 1964 Civil Rights Act. If you are gay and you are happy with same-sex marriage, you better thank black folks, because that's based upon the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. There is no group in America that is a disenfranchised group that has been able to benefit from America. That should not, everyone should be thanking black folks, because without the labor and the toil of black folks in the streets from 1619 to present day, there is no other group that would have been able to benefit. You can challenge me on the facts, but I got receipts. What I'm trying to say is this here. We know exactly where we are, where we're going, what we have to do, but what is required of us is to have a level of tenacity that's willing to stick this thing out. I don't care who you are, you're sitting in this room right now, and there's breath in your body. You might be bent over, you might not be able to walk as fast as you used to, but you still can do something to change. If you are middle-aged and younger, if you say, I can't fund it, but I can work it. I can't give money, but I can volunteer. You must decide right now whether you're willing and able to be a leader in the mold of King and Septima Clark, as well as Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and Ralph Abernathy and Andrew Young and Reverend Jackson and John Lewis. Pray for that brother as he fights pancreatic cancer. And Reverend James Lawson and Clarence Jones and Reverend Jackson, and the list goes on and on. Those elders, they did their job, they did their role, they got us to where we are, and it's time for this generation to accept the call and do what is required. If you come back here in 30 years talking about what the elders used to do and not what you're doing now, then you have failed to assume the responsibility of leadership. King gave you the marching orders to lead. King
gave you the game plan and the direction, and it's time for every single one of us to have the audacity to act it out. We better understand it's going to require us to have faith, to have focus, and for us to fight. Now, if some of y'all ain't ready to fight, move the hell aside. For those of us who are ready to fight, are willing to do it. And that's my frat brother, Vernon Woodson Tandy, made perfectly clear. He said we will fight until hell freezes over, and then we will fight on the ice.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
This is Diala Riddle, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay woke.
This is Director X, the director of Superfly on the red carpet, or the black carpet, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Yo, what up, y'all? This is Jay Ellis, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
I'm Lex Scott Davis, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play.